Judges, would you please introduce yourselves?
Good afternoon. My name is Becca Steinhoff. I am in Casper, Wyoming. I am the Executive Director of the John P. L. Bogan Foundation, and I'm delighted to be with all of you and hear from you today.
Hello, everyone. My name is Scott Barnhart. I am currently in Indianapolis, Indiana. I'm an attorney and I practice at the Indiana Attorney General's office. I do consumer protection law, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say today.
I'm Marcia Holland. I'm also an attorney, but in Missoula, Montana. I was a career public defender in Alaska and then moved back to Montana where I teach at the law school. I just finished my class teaching on Zoom. So I'm so glad we get to see you and participate with you in this Zoom We the People competition this year. Thank you so much for being here.
And students, please introduce yourselves and any teacher, coach, or mentor that you'd like to recognize as well.
Hello, good evening, judges. My name is Brianna Salas. In addition to We the People, I have been enrolled in our JROTC program at our school for 4 years and have been the Special Projects Officer at our school for 2 years in a row.
Hello, judges. My name is Laura Ann Moore, and outside of We the People, I am a competitive equestrian. Next year, I will be attending the University of the South.
Hello, judges. My name is Christian Schmenk, and after high school, I intend on attending Howard University for political science and literature. And with us today, we have our teachers and instructors, Milton Himes, Amy Henderson, and Michaela Tonking.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, this is Unit 6, and this evening we will hear from you question number 1. Thomas Hobbes noted that life in a state of nature is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. How has the human condition changed over time, and how is that change reflected in our expectations of the government? Should the principles of natural rights or classic republicanism guide policy changes designed to improve the condition of all people? What are the most pressing domestic and global challenges facing Americans today and in the future? What policies can you suggest to address them? You may begin when you're ready.
Philosopher Abraham Maslow stated, "In any given moment, we have two options, to step forward into growth or to step back into safety." The human condition has evolved from a struggle for survival to an industrialized, service-based, and progress-driven economy because of the social contract, shown through Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Maslow's hierarchy is a measure of needs that people have in relation to the type of government that they're under. In a new society, people expect that the government meets their basic physiological and safety needs. Then, as the government expands, citizens' needs evolve to want love and belonging, esteem, and self-actualization as they go further from a state of nature.
Hobbes believed that people in a state of nature should join small communities for the sake of safety. Native Americans pre-colonization were close to a state of nature, and life in the early American colonies was solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, in short, because of a lack of industrialization, widespread disease, and war with native tribes. The colonists only expected protection, the most basic need, which Parliament granted in the French Indian War.
The social contract transformed humanity's expectations of government. The social contract is a mutual agreement where the people give consent to be governed to receive protections of their inalienable rights. The stronger the social contract, the more people expect out of their government.
Now, in contrast to the state of nature, life is social, richer, sanitary, safe, and longer because of globalization, industrialization, advancement in healthcare, and increased leisure time. Citizens can utilize the social contract to ask more of their government. Americans today want the government to meet Maslow's social needs, esteem needs, and self-actualization needs.
The policy changes needed to improve the condition of all people should be driven by classical Republican principles to protect natural rights, also known as the practice of enlightened self-interest.
The social contract is vital in creating this ideal. Philosopher Rousseau stated that the social contract creates a sovereign body to carry out the general will of the people, showing how classical republicanism focuses on the common good. Additionally, natural rights for all people must be considered in policymaking because, as Locke believed, people enter into a social contract to protect their natural rights.
Enlightened self-interest must be at the center of our policymaking. It is the intersection of classical republicanism and natural rights philosophy, and benefits the individual as well as the community. De Tocqueville wrote, "It is the interest of every man to be virtuous." This ideal strengthens the social contract and advances the population in Maslow's hierarchy.
Most pressing global and domestic issues today are climate change and wealth inequality. They bring us closer to a state of nature and reverse our progress on Maslow's hierarchy. However, they can be remedied by policy changes driven by enlightened self-interest.
Climate change is creating an unsustainable future. According to the Carbon Major Analysis, 100 companies are responsible for 71% of global emissions. Tax breaks for companies who reduce their carbon footprint are enlightened self-interest policies that will benefit the company and the world.
The US has the highest wealth inequality in the developed world. Policies driven by enlightened self-interest that counteract poverty and gentrification can serve the common good. In a 2007 congressional hearing, Chairman of the House of Ways and Means, Charles Rangel, stated, "We should be driven by self-interest to address poverty, which is a drag on our economy." Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So I have a question in terms of your focus on social contract. I'm curious as to your thoughts on whether the unfortunate events on January 6th and the attack on the Capitol, whether you view that as an attempt to break or violate the social contract.
Well, specifically with the case on January 6th, we can look for guidance in the letter of Birmingham jail, which was actually released by Dr. King. And in this, in his letter, he outlines 4 steps to nonviolent civil disobedience, which was what happened on January 6th. And the first step of violent disobedience is the collection of facts to determine whether or not the injustice is alive. So based on this sole fact, I believe that there are no injustices that they were being fought on January 6th. So the breaking of the social contract done by the Capitol protesters was not good, in good faith.
Furthermore,
Go ahead. No, go ahead, please.
So furthermore, we can look to the actual revolution in the American War, where we fought for independence from Britain, which we did not have an established social contract with. Therefore, and through constitutional congresses and conventions, we had outlined in the Declaration of Independence that without that social contract, all of our exhausted resources had culminated in us having to fight violently, unlike the case at January 6th on the riots, where they had that opportunity to, as my colleague said previously, collect facts before openly declaring that they believed their rights were violated and the social contract was broken.
So somewhat related to that, we're living in times where there's increasing polarization among the citizens of the United States. And how do you think we can solve having each side listen to the other side? Oftentimes your social media and even traditional means of getting information is tied with reinforcing what you already know. Do you have any suggestions for how to have a better conversation among our citizens at any level, local, state, or federal?
Yes, so
go ahead.
Philosopher John Dewey stated that democracy must be reborn every generation, and education is its midwife. And I really love this quote because it shows that in order to create a stable democracy, we have to focus on civic education and educating our generation on how to have these conversations and how to actually talk to people who disagree with us.
Furthermore, in an article published by a PhD, Kate Schuster, talking about civil discourse, teaching young kids at a young age the importance of civil discourse and being able to hear each other out rather than promoting the polarization and often loud and bombastic opinions found on the internet can be a very good medium for the internet to be actually used as a new public square, or if you will, John Stuart Mill's idea of a marketplace of ideas where ideas can be exchanged freely and knowledgeably without this risk of lethal partisanship.
In addition to what my colleagues are saying, we can teach education to young kids by especially implementing programs like the We the People program. Only 19 out of 50 states actually require a government or civics course to graduate. And I think making this a requirement for all states to have in all high schools would also further the education and help progress, bring back what we've done with polarization and fix it.
Thank you.
You just talked a lot about education, so I want to focus the next question in that space. So what role does education have in advancing the human condition for all? And how do we ensure that that education is an equitable one and actually serves all?
So the United Nations has something called the Human Development Index, which is a way of measuring this progress that you talked about, progress for all in a country. And one of the main factors that they have is a quality education. And so the countries that rank the highest, which are Denmark, Sweden, Norway, and Finland, they all have universal education programs that are free and are a benefit from the taxpayer money.
Furthermore, seeing as education is higher on the tier of Maslow's hierarchy of needs to help us get into those more intellectual tiers, it should also be noted that formerly redlined communities are at a severe disadvantage in terms of development, in terms of infrastructure, which disparages a lot of lower income families. According to former White House Chief of Staff Leon Panetta, lower income families that are white, Black, and Latino are less educated and don't trust the government as much. And by solidifying a bond between these people and the government while educating them while simultaneously deepening the social contract, you can make it equitable for all people at every stage of wealth income.
I'd like to know a little bit more about your view on how technology plays into this and whether it's you consider an asset or a burden to addressing some of these issues that you've spoken about.
I would argue that technology, especially focusing on social media, has brought us back into less social capital. In Robert Putnam's Bowling Alone theory, he explains that social interaction has diminished in the last 70 years, and this causes people and groups to not be able to think or express their ideas. And technology has further advanced social anxiety in demographics across the nation, which can cause social capital to diminish as well.
I disagree with my colleague. I believe that social media is an important tool for expanding consent and expanding democracy. So for example, in 2018, after the Parkland, Florida school shooting, a group of young people that were pretty much just like us, they organized a movement called the March for Our Lives. And this was a way that they could petition the government and make the government be held accountable for these students' deaths. And I think this is a way that we improve the social contract using technology.
And I have a number of questions I'd like to ask you on this same topic, but I'm going to switch a little bit just to check in on something else. Do you think the United States should be a leader in reaching out to other countries, even countries where their beliefs don't align with ours, where their citizens are treated less fairly than we would think they should be? Or should the United States take a step back and focus primarily on making sure the United States is functioning well to the exclusion of other countries in the world? Or is there a balance in between?
I would say that the United States at this point needs to become a leader and show and demonstrate these characteristics of the social contract, especially with countries we have good relations with. We have to maintain them and help them build these democratic countries.
Yes, furthermore.
I disagree with my colleague. In Kinsella v. Kruger in 1957, the Supreme Court ruled that the Constitution prevails over all international treaties. And I think this is an important precedent to understand, and understanding how the United States should focus on our own citizens first, rather than our allies in our treaties.
I'd argue that for your third point, that it should be more of a balance in displaying an international form of enlightened self-interest by helping out other countries that we can thus benefit from our mutual relationships by, via helping them financially, militarily, such as the case with Taiwan, Egypt, and Japan. And we can deepen this bond and create a greater dynamic between the countries that benefit both mutually. Thank you.
Thank you. Good job.
Yes, thank you very much for that. We'll give some comments. I think you did a really wonderful job laying out your prepared remarks. You started by introducing Maslow's hierarchy and then kind of kept that as a theme as you talked your way through the different prompts in the question. I think I appreciated too that you used that to also acknowledge the evolution of needs and expectations over time. And then you linked that to some of your examples. I appreciate that you had strong examples from a local level all the way up to a global level. It's always interesting to hear how that plays out. And the last thing I would say is that we always appreciate when you can bring different perspectives and have that civil discourse at this level and disagree with one another and provide those differing opinions. And you did that very well. So clearly you have prepared for both those remarks that we expected to hear and then prepared enough to very thoroughly answer our questions. Thank you.
I agree. I think you guys did a great job. You probably have one of my perhaps favorite quotes of the day of young people just like us, right? So you're out there in terms of using examples of folks out there doing things, and I have no doubt that you all will do that as well. I really liked your use of the quotes and follow-up. I think it is more challenging to have a good quote that's on point and follow-up than it is in the paper, right? And the ability to do that meaningfully and to speak to what you're trying to say is very good, and it demonstrates your understanding of the material. So I appreciate that. You have a very relaxed tone and a very relaxed presentation, and it serves you well. And also as a demonstration that I think you understand the material very well. So nicely done, good job.
I just want to add a few additional comments. Just to having a stark framework of growth versus safety really helped anchor what we were going to hear from the beginning of your prepared remarks. So thanks to whoever, the team effort that came up with that way to bring your prepared remarks into a certain very successful discussion. I really appreciated that. I love the good use of words. I mean, this is all about substance rather than form, but the way you use groups of three, the way you got us back to Hobbes and you reminded us what Hobbes said, and then each of you emphasized groups of three. I didn't have time to write them all down, but it's like safe spaces, something, 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 something else. It really was such a visual. It was just really impressive that you're getting such a substantive piece of information to me by the use of how you said it. And that's a really sophisticated presentation. And finally, just as I think my fellow judges have said, as to the last question, the fact that one person wanted to take a certain point of view, the next person wanted to take a different point of view, and the third person wanted to kind of tie it all together is, really kind of sums up what we've been talking about for this whole presentation of civil discourse and disagreement is a very productive and positive thing. So thank you for making that crystal clear in your demonstrations. Wonderful job.